Good afternoon. This is Grant Swartzwelder, and welcome to the Oilfield Strong podcast. This episode is brought to you by the Permian Basin Oil and Gas Magazine, which delivers trusted information and news and insight on the oil and gas industry. We really appreciate their support of this podcast, and I think you'll find if you go and subscribe to them at www.pobg.com, what you'll find is kind of like the 60 Minutes of Oil and Gas, where they'll go in depth on various topics, and I think it'll really help you understand some of the key things that are affecting the oil and gas industry. So with that, one of the topics that I want to address today is about water. Water is so important in the oil and gas industry, but clearly it's important to our overall welfare. Whether it's agriculture, now you're seeing the challenges associated with data centers and AI. The need for water is huge. Listen to some of these stats that water demand in Texas will double in 50 years. There's 16 rural water associations. Half of them believe that they will run out of water within 20 years. This is a huge issue, and it's not going away. It's only going to increase as data centers, as population growth continues to hit Texas, and especially West Texas. Well, I was fortunate enough to serve on a committee through the Permian Basin Environmental and Regulatory Seminar that was held in Midland. With that seminar, that conference, they ended up awarding the Bruno Hansen Environmental Award to Senator Charles Perry. He gave a fabulous talk on water that I think is worthy of playing, and which we will do just after this. What you've seen, he has basically become an expert in water. He's a state senator. He became chairman of the Agriculture, Water, and Rural Affairs Committee, not only expert in water rights, but also in property rights. And probably the most recent thing he's accomplished was SB 7, which put out $1 billion a year for water rights, water management, and making sure that we're ready for the years to come. This also changed it from kind of a local issue to a statewide infrastructure issue, which is so important to be able to manage that. So I welcome you to be on this, listen to this video, and that you will listen to his speech. I think he gives a fantastic talk about the issues associated with water and how we might be able to address it. So I hope you enjoy the following presentation and comments by Senator Perry. Thank you.
Today, produced water is a viable water resource, and solving the environmental challenges that it creates in our oil and gas industry is a twofer. It's a 500,000 acre feet of new supply long term. Where we're at in that is TCEQ is going to issue the first discharge permit to some 4 applicants. Right now we have 4 private sector vendors out in this region. They'll have a discharge permit, I think, in the next 30 days. The science, you can beat a lot of alcohol's narrative with science, and that's important that we do it right. Nobody wants to pollute anything, but we have a real challenge. So turn the challenge from make lemonade out of lemons, so to speak. But TCEQ will have the first discharge permit, I believe, in the next 30 to 60 days. They're just putting everything together now to document where they're at. Follow that out with a land application permit. We moved that from the Railroad Commission to the TCEQ jurisdiction. Well, actually, TCEQ had land out. We moved some of the discharge permits over to TCEQ because they're about water quality. Made sense. So in the next 60 to 90 days, I think you'll see the discharge permit, and then we'll immediately follow up with land application permit. And I hope by the end of the year, both of those are in fully operational, that those 4 private sector companies will be working with them. The next is beneficial use. And we've got the growing seasons. We've probably got 6 growing seasons under our belt, different companies doing different growth. California, honestly, and I don't very often find many things I can point to. And actually, it was a great thing, but they managed to kill it. They have decades of beneficial use on produced water and growing crops. And they're one of the largest agricultural state, really. We like to take credit for several things. The Texas and cattle industry may rank there. Cotton, we're probably in the top 3. They actually have probably a more robust edible citrus, those kind of things that we all like to eat. But they have a backup history, and I asked a guy from Chevron yesterday when I was in Austin if he could get me that data so that we're not reinventing the wheel. So I think our beneficial use conversation in Texas for agricultural produced water, I've heard the term turn the Permian green, 1.5 million acres. Think about the ramifications of a new agricultural sector from what used to be called waste. We are really, really close and on precipice of turning that nut for produced water. Water supply, 16 regional water plants in Texas. 14 of the 16 tell us that we will be out of water, and the majority of those don't really have legitimate alternatives to solving that. Now, here's the truth. The funding that we set up will develop 4 new water supplies, and we can meet the needs of Texas. It's expensive, it's long-term, it requires coordination and planning. Those are counterintuitive to a political cycle because nobody thinks long-term anymore. So I appreciate your group being involved at a level to dispel the myths, prove the facts, and actually give us a new water supply. Because regionally, that is a viable water supply we have to have. So we're in good shape because we have the wealth and we have the undeveloped resources from water. But it has to be done responsibly. And what the Permian Basin's been able to do over the last 50 years is show the industry, environmental, and other interested stakeholder groups for the good of the public can find viable alternatives and solutions to meet the childish remakes. And it wouldn't happen without people like you. I didn't know Commissioner Wright was going to speak. We got to get him back. And I don't know your voting records. I don't care. I do care if you don't vote. Our system demands educated, informed people to work in it. We are being ran by a very small group of people that I would tell you their education comes from social media every day. I promise you the counterpart to Jim Wright is not someone y'all would like. It's not someone that I believe is competent in this field. So I'll talk a little politics. If you're not engaged, shame on you. But Jim Wright is the guy that can further, because Jim Wright, honestly, is the more environmentally conscious and background driven than the other two. Not that the other two are bad, they're all three work well together. But we need Jim back in there for y'all's issues. The produced water side, I need him in there, but it matters. It just matters. Politics matter, whether you like it or not. You need to be engaged in that. With that, I'd said I would take a question or two. I don't know, anybody has a question? I could talk to you about water. I could talk to you about legislative session. We're going to have about a $5 to $9 billion cash balance above what we thought we would have. I've already spent $50 billion, if truth be known, if we're covering the things we need to do. So money's going to be tight. If we go down this road of property tax buy downs, you can kiss infrastructure goodbye. We have a $173 billion water problem. We have a $100 billion flood and other infrastructure problems. We have an unfunded liability of pension plans problems. Governor Berry, I loved Governor Berry. I served under Governor Berry. He used to have a saying, Texas is the best there is, but we're still the least drunk in the room. So we've got room to improve. I'll leave you with a little thought. Chief Little Cloud just got made head chief. Part of his responsibility was reading the weather. So all these comrades of his tribe came to him and said, what do we need to be doing for winter? This was about August. And he says, I don't know, let me check. Winter's coming, you're probably going to be cold, so you probably have to stock up some blood. Well, Chief Little Cloud figured out that he wasn't a weather expert, so he went to an expert in town. And he says, what should I tell my people about winter? And the guy said, I think it's going to be a normal winter. So he went back and said, just bring in a little wood. Well, kind of moving along a little bit, they kept coming to him, and he kept going back to the weather guy, and he said, what's the weather front look like for the winter this year? He said, well, I don't know. I think it's going to be a little colder. So he went back and he told his people, bring in more wood. And that went on for quite a while, to the point where the weather guy would tell him, say, it's going to be a really cold winter. I think you really need to get more wood. So he went back, and the guys brought him more wood. And finally, little chief went back to the guy. He says, you know, we've stacked up wood forever. And he says, what are you looking at to tell us it's going to be this cold? He said, I don't know really what the weather's going to do, but that tribe that I look at, they're bringing in a lot of wood. So the point is, if nobody's really planning, nothing gets done. And you better know who you're planning is competent when they're doing the planning. But if you're electing people that have short-term plans, then we're going to end up in a bad way. So find that place, get involved in political voice, get involved in the people that you're electing, get involved in the education of who they are. I bet you $5, and I'm going to have 5 in my pocket because I have grandkids. And you'll make sure now that I knows I have 5, I won't have it by lunch. That if you do the research of these 2 candidates that impact your daily world out here, you'll be shocked. That's got political momentum. I'm just telling you, you need to be paying attention to who you elect. Thank you for the award. Is there any one question that's on anybody's mind? Turning or otherwise. That's good. Yes, sir.
You see desalination is as part of that clear water.
So right now, desal is 3 of the 4 new options. So here's the water plant in general. We're 10 to 12 million acre feet short by 2060. The water plant will tell you 70, 75 on. It's really, we're 20 years behind. Of that 10 to 12 million acre feet short, we have a legitimate 6 million acre feet replacement. I would say right now, competence can do it. The water plant itself is a good plan, but when you evaluate a plan, you need to make sure it's a real plan. When I got in session in 2015 as freshman over water, I looked at the plan. There were 4 reservoirs predicted to be online by 2020 delivering water to Texas. They have not started their federal permitting or TCQ permitting or all the emitted domain. When you look at that plan and you start pulling things out that are not going to happen politically or economically no more, that's why I moved that estimate to about 10 to 12 million acre feet short so you start pulling things if it happens. To your point, of the options available for Texans to meet its water needs, 4 options. 1, marine desal where it makes sense. You hear a lot about Corpus. Corpus is a victim of their own making. They should have been drinking from seawater today had it not been for politics. They systemically voted out people with a vision till they got to the no vote, do not want to raise their rates to cover the cost of the desal plant. Now they're scrambling. Just an FYI, that's a global impact. They had $380 million economic impact to Texas per day. They produce 25% of the Jet A fuel that our fighters depend on, and they pull up the large LNG market. So it matters, but they are a case study not only for water problem, but for the politics around the water. And now they're figuring out that all those people that said we should do this were really brilliant, and they're voting out the mayor as I speak that led that charge. So marine desal where it makes sense. I broke the 16 regions up to look at them. What is the source available in those regions? Marine desal where it makes sense. Second one was brackish aquifer is our backup. We have about 5 billion acre feet available of brackish water. It will be our backup to meet the shortfall. The third option was the produced water, because clearly out here that's an untapped resource. The fourth option is surface water. Internal to Texas borders, we have 600,000 feet of unpermitted, unappropriated water in our rivers. And then of that too, I'm in conversations with states contiguous to us that would be about 1 to 1.5 million acre feet of surface water. If I can get the politics right. I think my level of politics, my counterparts in these states are agreeable and think it is a time. So we have to develop that water, but you add all those up and you can meet your water, but you've got to be working on them today, and you need to be about 75% into those sources today, or Texas will not have water. Corpus is not a one-off, an antidote. Corpus is the canary in the coal mine. I have metropolitan areas here that need 500,000 acre feet of water by 60, and they need half of the 500,000 acre feet by 35. and they're not working today on a solution to do that. So desal is 3 of the 4. Yes, sir.
Senator, thank you for being here. Could you speak to your perceptions of aquifer storage and recharge and how that could come into the water plant?
Aquifer storage and rechargeable will become a viable part of the desal conversation, a viable part of flood planning. In my flood plan, we had no flood plan until after Harvey. Fast forward, we get a flood plan voted in 19, working with Corps. I did duck state tour, did some things. What I'm saying there is there's opportunity to develop water supply by aquifer storage and recourse store during excess rains. Also, municipals that want to get ahead and have a storage, San Antonio's been doing this for a while, been a really good leader in that. So they have the opportunity that they are currently, I think, storing and recovering some of that desal process. They have desal's not new. Texas has been doing desal for a long time. El Paso's been doing it for decades. San Antonio's been doing it for decades. The new water supply plan made a distinction. In order for it to get state funding, it must be above 3,000 parts. The reason I did that is we cannot incentivize the taking of fresh water with state dollars because it's already a depleted resource, and landowners did not want state subsidy subsidizing the freshwater use. So it has to be a 3,000 parts and up, which means brackish is the key. AI data centers are eating my district up right now. They are not water hogs. If you don't understand them, at the end of the day, every new one comes on board is less and less for water. I'll give you the Stargate out of Abilene, Texas, one of the largest ones in the country. 80 acre feet of water a year is all it's going to use. So we don't have a problem there except for the fact they're going into areas that are even water depleted. So it's just a scary thing, but they are not, as an industry, irresponsible water users, but they do use water. So that's a question. But do they have it? Yes, that will be part of the conversation. Reuse is an important piece, but I remind people reuse doesn't really create new supply, it just extends the current supply we have. We have to have new supply because to be Texas water needs. One other, and I think they've probably got a schedule. Any other questions? Good questions. Well, as you can tell, I'm into the water world at a very granular level. I've had to become a power person because water and power are inseparable. So it's been a very unique but encouraging process to see that we can solve it. But we're not there today, but it takes deliberate effort to do it right. And you guys are the large part of doing it right. You guys are the balancer, right? You keep everything kind of moving in the right way to be done right. So I appreciate your efforts. Thank you for the award. Thank you for your dad's efforts. Again, it just takes one voice to change the world. And don't ever think you don't have a season in life and why you're here. My season in life is, for whatever reason, God's sense of humor said, go be a politician. I don't know quite why. And it's a tough job sometimes. It's not relevant to here, but it is relevant to here. 2 days this week in Austin, we were in Camp Mystic hearings. For those that don't know it, we lost 27 girls in a river last July. So we're having those investigative hearings. So I'm reminded, no matter what I've done on this side of the world, there's an eternity wait. But most importantly, sometimes we think we really, really got it hard. You don't have to look very far to find out how hard you can have it. And the testimony of those parents coming through was just a reminder how precious life is. And when you have these grandkids, you need to hold them a little tighter sometimes. But life is hard this side. I hope you got the other side figured out, but that's real stuff, and that's some of the other things politicians do. I don't want to discount my members. They're smart people doing hard things in a really difficult world. But for the most part, their hearts are right. So get to know us, get to know them, and you got a good one in Kevin Sparks here. Good Christian guy, but a smart guy, and he knows your industry well. We worked well together. It's part of our world. And unfortunately, you guys, a lot of what we get to do. So you need to make sure you're electing people that have a higher call. that are there for the right reasons. Majority of members are. But man, if you get it wrong, there's heck to pay, as my mom would say. Thank you, guys.
If you enjoyed today's conversation, be sure and check out Permian Basin Oil and Gas magazine for deeper industry coverage and analysis. Thanks to PBOG for supporting Oilfield Strong and helping to amplify these important conversations. Subscribe today at pbog.com.